Matthew Morrison Gets the Grinch Pregnant. Made by Unicorn SMP 035. No one knew how hard it was to be a Gleek other than Matthew Morrison. His entire life, he was made fun of for starring on the show Glee with his other cast members. Matthew might have even said that being a Gleek being a fan of the show Glee, was probably the hardest group of people that have to live in the US. Matthew sighed. Even though he faced so much oppression by being a Gleek, he still got a recent position as playing the Grinch in a new live-action retelling of Dr. Seuss's famous story. He had all his prosthetics on, and Matthew Morrison really liked getting into character and even painted every part of himself green to see what it was like to live as the Grinch. Day by day, as he performed and acted as the Grinch leading up to the final day, he increasingly grew attracted to the character that he played. One night, he was about to go to sleep, and he wondered what it would be like to be the Grinch. But he knew he had work tomorrow and went to sleep. Matthew Morrison woke up, but he didn't realize that he was awake, but that he was in a dream. In this dream, he found himself in Whoville with all those weird-shaped nose, little-ass bitches. All Matthew Morrison wanted was the Grinch. He climbed up the magical snow to enter the Grinch's lair, where he saw the Grinch looking for one of his treasure items, his nice perk green ass up in the air as the Grinch bent over looking for whatever he was looking for in his chest. Matthew Morrison came from behind and finally introduced himself. "Hello there, I'm Matthew Morrison." The Grinch shrieked. No one has ever stepped in his lair before aside from his puny little dog. This was the first visitor he ever had. What are you doing in here, sweetie pie?" the Grinch said, jokingly calling him Matthew Morrison sweetie pie. Matthew Morrison was already getting his heart on. On his show of Glee, he was known for being a pervy teacher, but all he was perv for was the Grinch's tight ass. Matthew Morrison came up. "It's me, Matthew Morrison, and you're fucking sexy as hell." The Grinch looked up in disgust, as if he didn't understand the sexual tension that was between the two, and shrugged. "Well, who the fuck are you? I hate all those consumerist assholes in Whoville, and you're probably just one of them." Matthew Morrison laughed. "Oh no, baby. I'm all for you." Matthew Morrison went up and grabbed the hips of the Grinch. The Grinch, obviously not liking this, tried to pry Matthew Morrison's clammy long fingers, but Matthew Morrison's grip held. The Grinch interjected, What are you doing?" Matthew Morrison responded, "Oh, sweet Grinch. Oh my gosh, you have such a fucking good dad bod. What the fuck, you're so fucking sexy. Oh, Grinchy boy," Matthew Morrison continued. I'm going to figure out if your heart was 4 times as small. And after this, your heart won't grow, but your pulsating anus will, from when I tear it apart with my thick, throbbing, magical member." The Grinch shrieked. Even though this was a dream, the Grinch was still feeling the pain. He was in fright. He couldn't move at all. The Grinch, the scariest person in Whoville, couldn't stand up to an even scarier villain. That villain being Matthew Morrison. He stood there, and his dog watched as Matthew Morrison slowly caressed the green fur of the Grinch, slowly sliding his clammy, long hands down to the Grinch's rear. When his hands arrived, he groped the Grinch's tight, perky, round, green apple-colored ass and held it tight. The Grinch was standing still, a single tear falling from his eyes as he let Matthew Morrison violate his body. Matthew Morrison led one of his hands up to the Grinch's mouth, where he said, "Suck it." And the Grinch, scared for his life, decided to let Matthew Morrison's fingers slide into his mouth. And Matthew Morrison explored the inner body workings of the Grinch's slimy tongue. Matthew Morrison, with his other hand, began massaging the asshole of the Grinch. When he went to find the Grinch's dick to give a little ball tickle, he was surprised to feel a smooth vagina instead. Matthew Morrison was surprised because he was in the belief that the Grinch was a boy. But Matthew Morrison, always the opportunist, just saw it as a positive. Now he had 2 holes to destroy instead of 1. Another surprising fact that Matthew Morrison found was when he kept rubbing the Grinch's vagina, caressing the clitoris very slightly, that the Grinch produced a lot of wet slick. So much wet slick, in fact, that Matthew Morrison didn't even need saliva as a lube to enter the delicate workings of the Grinch's lady parts. Matthew Morrison quickly pulled down his pants and displayed his long member. This was still a dream, of course, so Matthew Morrison's member was candy caned, had candy cane colors, as to show his Christmas spirit. Matthew Morrison took his candy cane cock and started rubbing it on the front of the Grinch's vagina. The Grinch shrieked in horror, and as much as the Grinch was crying, his body was interacting with Matthew's touches in a very aroused way. The Grinch's brain fought his body. Part of him wanted to moan, the other part wanted to cry his eyes out and kill himself. But nothing stopped Matthew Morrison as he shockingly entered into the Grinch without any notice. This time the Grinch did scream, but it was followed by a moan. The moan allowing Matthew Morrison to understand that the Grinch wanted this. Matthew Morrison slowly pumped into the Grinch's vagina. His other hand that used to be in the Grinch's mouth was on the Grinch's chest, rubbing the Grinch's soft nipples and the areola. The Grinch was still crying, but who could tell if those cries were moans, as Matthew Morrison increased his pumping. He kept pumping and pumping inside the Grinch crying out loud, but Matthew Morrison didn't care. Now, the Grinch might have been known for his small heart, but Matthew Morrison had a smaller one. He was only in this for his pleasure. He kept fucking the Grinch violently until the Grinch noticed that Matthew Morrison stopped. And that's when the Grinch found out. The Grinch took one hand to feel the empty vagina that was once filled with Matthew Morrison's cock. And the Grinch started crying, realizing what Matthew Morrison has done. The Grinch took the hand from the vagina and looked at it. That's when he saw Matthew Morrison's cum. He wasn't wearing protection. He didn't pull out. The Grinch cried as she realized that she was going to have to give birth to Matthew Morrison's baby. This realization set in. She didn't experience anything else after there. All she experienced was an empty feeling in her stomach. She thought she was going to barf, but she couldn't feel anything. The Grinch just stood there as Matthew Morrison proceeded to anally penetrate the Grinch, filling that hole with cum as well. The Grinch didn't know what to do. The Grinch didn't want to give birth to such a monstrosity. She knew herself that she wasn't the best person, but Matthew Morrison was evil too, and giving birth to their baby would 100% surely mark the birth of the Antichrist. Matthew Morrison woke up from the dream, thinking none of it happened, and, none of it might have not happened, but all we know is that one day, maybe soon, in Matthew Morrison's dreamland, the Grinch will give birth to his baby. And the Grinch, who is in Matthew Morrison's dreamland right now, killed herself. And yes, she might have been a figment of Matthew Morrison's subconscious, but she couldn't deal with it. She died. She couldn't bring birth to Matthew Morrison's baby. The moral of the story is that Matthew Morrison is an evil person. The end. And Merry Christmas to all. And Happy Hanukkah and Kwanzaa.